Welcome back to the Dry Fasting Club. Today we're going to be talking about dry fasting and the carnivore diet. What is it? Well, the carnivore diet is basically like an extreme version of the ketogenic diet, or keto. It tries its best to eliminate most, if not all, carbohydrates from your diet. It's basically supposed to be mainly animal proteins and animal fats. The carnivore diet is gaining in popularity because of a few things. One, its simplicity, its inflammation reduction, the mental clarity that you get, the digestive benefits, and then the fat loss and muscle gain. Yes, sometimes it sounds too good to be true. Although I use this diet as a synergistic tool with dry fasting, and I believe it's extremely powerful, I don't advocate for it being your forever diet. There's just too many variables at play. But we can't deny that the carnivore diet is some of the most nutrient-dense food on the planet. And at the same time, it helps us to get rid of processed foods, refined sugars, both things that are key to good health. We're going to talk about the synergy between the carnivore diet and dry fasting when it comes to things like therapeutic dehydration, fat adaptation, muscle retention, muscle growth, and the nutrients. But we're also at the same time going to touch on some possible negatives like cortisol spikes, electrolyte imbalances, and digestive problems. So strap yourselves in. Welcome to the Dry Fasting Club. Please remember that all fasting should be done with medical supervision. All information provided here should be viewed as informational only and should never supersede medical advice. When you are adding fasting or making lifestyle and dietary changes, please discuss with your medical professional first. So the carnivore diet is often viewed as a way of returning to our primal roots and eating exclusively animal-based foods. When it comes to things like building muscle, dry fasting needs a helping hand. A modified carnivore diet helped me go from this to this. It's usually a way of eating for people that believe that humans have evolved as hypercarnivores or obligatory carnivores. This diet promotes enhanced mental clarity, increased energy, and rapid weight loss due to ketosis and fat adaptation. The diet eliminates sugars and carbs. Usually people report that their blood sugar levels stabilize, they have a diminished appetite, and it naturally leads to calorie restriction without the sensation of actually depriving yourself of food. The diet focuses on a rich intake of animal-based foods, including organs, which supports muscle growth, skin health, and optimal cognitive functioning. A lot of people love this diet because of its simplicity. You don't have to constantly manage your meals. Now, I know all of this sounds very wonderful, but it's very important to remember that there are not enough studies on longevity. There's no long-term studies, so we don't really know how safe it is in the long run. If you do not ingest any supplements with this diet, you may be missing out on a few key minerals and nutrients, things like phytonutrients, and you may be dealing with issues like electrolyte imbalances. Let's talk a little bit more about the synergy with both dry fasting and the carnivore diet. Okay, so we know that naturally by eating more animal products, we're basically minimizing carbohydrates. And that means that we're going to enter ketosis much easier and much faster. Ketosis is where the body burns fat for fuel instead of carbs for fuel. This synergizes so well with dry fasting. Because you get to enter the fast already in a state of ketosis, you get to bypass that keto flu stage in the first few days of a dry fast. The first few days of a fast can be the hardest barrier to break. Along with things like caffeine withdrawal, the keto flu is usually one of the biggest barriers to break, especially past 36 hours. Both the carnivore diet and dry fasting stimulate autophagy, the body's natural cleansing process. So if you're already in a higher autophagic state because of the diet, the dry fast is just going to speed things up. Since dry fasting already supports supercharged autophagy, can you just imagine how much more powerful it can be coming in from a carnivore diet? And let's not forget there's a third very powerful synergy between both of them, and it's therapeutic dehydration. Low-carb diets deplete glycogen, and glycogen stores water. So naturally, entering the dry fast from a slightly more dehydrated state means that you can get to the benefits sooner rather than later. This may actually mean that a 3-day dry fast from someone coming from a carnivore diet may actually be similar in strength to a 4-day dry fast for someone coming in from a higher carb diet. However, in the same vein of thought, it might actually be harder for someone coming from a carnivore diet to reach those really high dry fasting numbers, something like 7 and up. So that's something to keep in mind if that's what you're going for. Now let's talk about mTOR and AMPK when it comes to a high protein diet. So we already know that autophagy gets supercharged on a dry fast, but the carnivore diet is full of animal proteins, so it should naturally inhibit autophagy, and we don't want that. The worry here is that the carnivore diet may actually accelerate aging, even if it makes you feel really good. However, we do have to take some things into consideration. There's a balance on autophagy mechanisms between mTOR and AMPK. Think of mTOR as anti-autophagy because it focuses on growth and replication, while AMPK is focused on fasting, resting, and recycling. So mTOR is activated by amino acids, while AMPK is activated by fasting and calorie restriction. Okay, but here's where things get interesting. In a carnivore diet, even with higher protein, AMPK can still be stimulated if carbohydrate intake remains low, especially if you're doing some form of intermittent fasting. A lot of people that do the carnivore diet actually eat 1 meal a day or maybe just 2 meals a day. In this case, it strikes an interesting balance between recycling and growth. And this can potentially be enough to counterbalance the effects of that aggressive mTOR activation. So by dry fasting, you're essentially fixing any damage caused by the overconsumption of protein, and you're guaranteeing that you get the best of both worlds. Dry fasting for the win. Okay, so let's talk about cycling diets for perfection. Now, we're not going to dive too deeply into the possible negatives of being constantly in ketosis. In a perfect world, we can cycle between things like states of ketosis and states of cycling with carbs and nutrient storage. Of course, approaching a dry fast from a very low carb diet is going to mean that your fast, the first few days of the fast, are basically going to be a walk in the park. Your body will already be in fat burning mode, and your fat loss is just going to skyrocket. Think of it like supercharging your dry fast, especially for those shorter duration ones. If you're looking for that perfect anti-aging practice, then look into things like 36-hour dry fasts once a week. The goal here is going to be to prep for that fast with about 2 days of a low carb diet, then performing the 36-hour fast, and then jumping and cycling back into a little bit of carb loading. The goal with switching to carbs is to actually lower your cortisol levels. You get to also stock up on minerals, and you get to harness the power of the human growth hormone spike that you get right after a dry fast. If you can dial this in on a week-by-week basis, in a few months, you won't even recognize yourself. Of course, if you want to speed it up even more, then you have options like increasing the duration of your dry fasts. Your blood sugar levels are going to improve, your energy is going to skyrocket, you'll lose weight, and you'll gain muscle. But remember, there are multiple ways of achieving this health and multiple different diets that you can use. Harnessing the carnivore diet is just one way of getting faster results. Until next time. Thanks for sticking around. If you've dry fasted before, have any questions or requests for future topics, please leave them in the comments below. I always check the comments for inspiration and ideas. If you're looking for a chat or to set up your dry fasting plan, check out the dryfastingclub.com website and subscribe. You should also check out the Discord community where you can meet other new and experienced dry fasters. Remember, no two people are the same, so every fasting experience is unique. Thank you and good luck on your dry fasting journey.